Hello there, Mandy here. Restorative Grief with Mandy Capehart is not just a podcast. It's also a book, a free online grief group, and a one-on-one private coaching practice. If you are interested in learning more, visit mandykapehart.com to find out how restorative grief can help you heal heart, mind, body, and spirit. Welcome back to Restorative Grief with Mandy Capehart. You are listening to episode 223, titled The Lost Voice with Greta Morgan. How would you feel if everything you believed about yourself suddenly changed? If everything you thought was true about your future and your present was now uncertain? As grievers, we wrestle with uncertainty and face down the unknown every day, but musician Greta Morgan never anticipated that her own grief experience would include losing her voice. Our conversation today is about the experiences of her loss, the 5 years she's wondered about what will happen with her voice, and the beauty that has surfaced as part of the healing process. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Restorative Grief with Mandy Capehart. I am Mandy, of course, and today I'm joined by Greta Morgan, a writer and musician whose creative life includes indie pop rock bands such as The Hush Sound, Gold Motel, Springtime Carnivore, and touring gigs with Vampire Weekend and Jenny Lewis. She's here with me, not just to talk about music, but to discuss her new memoir titled The Lost Voice, which is a beautiful and lyrical reflection on identity, silence, and what it means to lose something essential to who you are and who you can become afterwards. So, Greta, thank you so much for making time to be with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And before we get into the heart of your story and your book and why we're together, would you share a little bit about that impressive creative life and resume and really what's shaped the work that you do as a musician?
Yeah, well, I started very young. I had a wild streak of beginner's luck. My first band, the Hush Sound, started when I was 15. We, started rehearsing in my mom's basement, and we were kind of plucked from obscurity by the band Fall Out Boy, the pop punk band.
Wow. Yeah.
We were signed to their record label when I was in high school, and I went on an arena tour opening for them during my senior year of high school. So I was like doing my chemistry homework backstage, hanging out with all these rock and roll musicians, emailing my teachers, going out and playing for 10 or 20,000 people. That was like my introduction to touring life.
Wow.
So I came in hot. Um,
Yeah.
need, Needless to say, between then and now, there were lots of ups and downs. So I had this kind of early break, and then there were lots of professional ups and downs. I started a band called Gold Motel. I did a bunch of writing for publishing companies. I wrote songs that were on television shows. Mostly, I wanted to make my own records. I started a solo project called Springtime Carnivore, which was the first kind of true solo project that I had. And that opened all of these creative doors where it felt like things were really aligning. I was opening for some of my favorite musicians. I toured opening for the Zombies and started playing with Jenny Lewis, which was wonderful. And then in 2018, I joined the band Vampire Weekend. And we were touring, we were playing sort of like the bucket list venues
Hmm.
for musicians. We were headlining the Hollywood Bowl and Madison Square Garden and playing at Red Rocks. And it was just professionally and creatively and socially, it was a huge high point in my career. And it really kind of lit this fire for me to make, the best solo record I had ever made. I had all of this excitement and this kind of creative, just vivaciousness, and was feeling a lot of hunger to do that. And then in early 2020, we played one of the last festivals just as the world was shutting down for COVID. We played the Okeechobee Festival in Florida. After that, I became very sick with which what I now assume was COVID. And yeah, it altered my voice. The high fever that I had altered my voice in ways that I have still not been able to recover from. So I was diagnosed with spasmodic dysphonia late in 2020. That's a neurological voice disorder that basically causes your vocal cords to spasm involuntarily when you're singing. And yeah, so I my life has been there's been a very clear sort of before and after that
Yeah.
moment. And then subsequently, I've been working with my vocal issue for the last 5 years. I had COVID two more times, which I don't write about this in the book, but I had COVID two more times and was acutely disabled by it for 18 months. I'm
Wow.
doing so much better now, but my life has been drastically altered by just um, the results of this illness and like learning how to live. I've been learning how to live a totally different life. I've been unable to tour, unable to sing my old catalog, unable to perform all the songs I've written. And actually, I mean, unable to go to concerts, honestly. Like I'm just kind of getting strong enough where I might be able to do that. So, yeah, my life has changed dramatically, and I've found totally different avenues of creativity that I never anticipated I would have, sort of
Yeah.
by necessity.
Because we know very well that writers and musicians and creative people cannot remain inexpressive. So obviously, a book was the natural next step.
I guess so. I guess so. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I know when I'm not being creative,
Yeah.
something is wrong.
Yeah.
Like when I'm not making things, there's reason for concern.
Yeah. Well, speaking of your book, it opens with this beautiful line, you never know when it's the last time. And of course, when I was reading it, that was so profound because, yes, it's such a weight that hits hard with a truth like that, especially for anyone else who's moving through like the idea of grief or sudden change and has no long experience behind them with it or understanding. So I'm curious, what does that line mean to you now? And why did you decide this is a place to start my memoir? You never know when it's the last time.
I guess because I lived in this mode where I thought my musical life would last forever. And I took for granted
Mm,
idea that I would be able to make all the things I wanted to make
mhm,
creatively. Um, yeah, I took so much for granted. It's interesting because a number of people who were really, really close to me died in sudden and tragic ways when I was a teenager, which I write about in the book. And so I had this awareness that like life could end suddenly. I was very aware of living my days with as much kind of aliveness as possible, touching life as much as possible. But I never anticipated that life could go on, but a huge piece of my life could die. I just had never thought about that. And I think I was so fortunate with this track record of perfect health. Like I took my body for granted and I took my body's abilities for granted. And one thing I say in the book is like I pushed and I pushed and I pushed and I pushed my body and I never anticipated it was going to push back.
wow. Yeah, it's that death of a dream that so many of us are unaware exists. We disconnect from the complexity of how grief really affects different areas of who we are. And it can be incredibly jarring.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. That makes me think about the poetic nature of the book that you wrote, and really just exploring the death of a dream and how it intermingles with those parts of who we are, those, creative parts, the baseline identity parts. And I'm curious about what it was like for you when you first realized, wow, my voice is not going to come back how I expect it to. And what that initial experience of the death of a dream and potential futures and outcomes really looked like for you.
Well, everyone says there's the five stages of grief. And my kind of joke was that grief is more like a wheel of fortune. So you wake up and you spin and you're like, what's it gonna be today? Am
Yeah,
I gonna
I love
be
that.
am I gonna be in denial? Am I gonna be bargaining? Am I gonna be pissed? And I think I really swung in so many different directions. I would kind of bargain with the universe, like, okay, if my voice comes back, I'll donate all the money I make from music to charity. I will do this. I will, like just kind of making promises to the higher powers. I would do that, and then I would like watch my videos of my friends performing on tour, performing at the Grammys and just sob and think I will never be a performer like I used to be. I will never get to have that again. So I've had many different facets of it. And it's interesting because, now I'm 5 years into this process. The doctors all told me this condition typically gets worse as you get older, but I was sort of like, you don't know me.
Yeah, yes. All of
So,
us have exceptionalism within, and the
yeah,
moments we need it to come to the
yeah.
surface are not always the moments that it will, but go on.
Right. Yeah, but I was very much like, yeah, maybe because probably most people don't take care of themselves. So as they
Sure.
age, their body, starts to break down. But I've been just rebuilding my entire life around recovery and around supporting my body. So even in these last few months, like I have more vocal access now than I have in 5 years,
Mhm.
but it still has this incredible day-to-day variability. Um, Spasmodic dysphonia is in the limbic system of the brain, the emotional center of the brain. So I'll notice even I might do my vocal warm-ups in the morning and have a certain amount of access that's re feels so good and so free and kind of, I'm amazed by. And then I'll read some tragic horror story on the news, and I can even feel afterwards my voice will be trembling and shaking just in response to the emotional reaction of that.
Mhm.
So it's everything from emotions to how much caffeine I drink, how much sleep I get. Like my body really, they say the body keeps the score. I'm like, my voice really keeps the score. It's sort of like a lie detector test. Like you can
Mhm.
tell when I'm uncomfortable or when I'm stressed.
Yeah. Well, and it's such a vulnerable place to be in with a true diagnosis behind having your voice tremble when you're nervous or upset about something, right? But we know that we all experience some type of expression of discomfort, or when we're upset, our throat gets tight, our chest constricts, our stomach gets nauseated. The body responds to what it perceives to be a threat. And if your emotional well-being feels like it's being threatened by a story that you can't influence or control, or just that you empathize with, of course that expression is going to be so much more amplified when you're already dealing with an unhappy nervous system, a system that's not functioning the way that you expect it to. And the way you described just the wheel of fortune is so charming and so wonderful, because the stages are never meant to be prescriptive, right? They're just a description of what might be possible and what might be true, what you might experience in a cacophonous, chaotic way, in a very non-linear expression. And so to hear you describe it so beautifully, I mean, it's a testament to who you are as a writer, of course, and being able to really dig in, but you're also normalizing the disruption and the dysfunction that comes when we feel like, "Oh, I'm having a really good day." And then all of a sudden, something unexpected comes in to that space where you're like, "Well, no fair. I woke up
Yeah,
and I was doing really well. I'm doing the work. Why isn't this changing my
yeah,
outcome?"
right. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I heard, I don't know who the original source of this quote is, but I heard a description of grief that grief is sort of like a stone that stays the same size, but you become stronger around it, or
Yeah.
like you become stronger, so carrying it feels lighter. I definitely feel like I have reinforced my life with so many other beautiful aspects, so many other kinds of creativity and so much other beauty relationally that the more I keep building a beautiful life, the less I am needing to like grieve what's gone, and the more I feel like I'm living into these new possibilities.
I love that. I was going to ask about how other areas of your life have been impacted by grief because of losing your singing voice as a physical experience, but you just named it so beautifully that when you identify that there's a gap in one area, you intentionally lean toward other areas to bulk up, so to speak, right? When you know you're going to take a punch to the face, maybe you're going to do some neck exercises and strengthen your neck
Right.
muscles so you don't have as much of a whiplash experience.
Yeah. Yeah, like it's always as far as other parts of life that it affects, It's always sad, or not always, it's often sad when I see many of my best friends who are musicians,
Mm.
like they're all playing the same festival together or something like that, and everyone's there and they're having such a good time. And it's sort of for me the double whammy of like, oh, well, I couldn't sing my own songs even if I was booked to play, but also like traveling is hard. Like I'm still kind of my body's recovering after taking a pretty huge hit. So that type of grief comes up a lot, which I guess, it's sort of like a missing out kind of feeling. But then I look at the life that I have, which I live, there's 50 acres of wild lands right where my cabin is where I live. And I just, I mean, I know it sounds funny, like I go hang out with the animals, but if I just sit on the porch right outside my bedroom, there are bears, there are wild turkeys, there are deer. There's a family of fawns who live on the property, and I see them all day. I see them every day. They of course don't replace my friends, but there is this sense of like, oh my God, the amount of beauty
Mhm.
that is right outside my door. This is the kind of thing I might have fantasized about when I was playing Glastonbury and I was exhausted and I was jet lagged and I was like eating food backstage that didn't really feel good for my body. I probably would have been sitting there going, man, what if I could just like be in a cabin in the woods watching the sunset and watching the fireflies come out. So I have to remember that like this is the life I'm living now is the dream life of some other version of myself.
Yeah, I've said almost identical words as I've gotten older and experienced my own losses, started businesses, become a mom, all the different things. I've checked in moments where grief wants to have a conversation with me as well. And it's a matter of not bypassing our pain, but of recognizing a deeper meaning in what we're experiencing. Is this is the dream of younger me? This is the dream of a
Yeah,
former me, of a future me, of a different me.
right.
It is such a gift to have that level of intuitive awareness. And you talked a little bit about writer's block after you were diagnosed. And I think that in your book, you really describe how so much of your story is this in between space, this future and past versions of ourselves kind of colliding, these moments where you are recognizing my future is not what I thought it would be. And I'm in this liminal tension of my identity not being what I thought it was. Answers are not sure. Your diagnosis doesn't come with a cure attached. It's all about something is going to change, but we're not sure what it is. And I'm just curious, how did how did writing the book and facing down even writer's block and trying to express yourself help you have a different perspective? Or maybe how did it change your perspective about that liminal space and what's to come?
Yeah, that's such a beautiful question. Thank you.
Mhm.
Um, I do think again, I'm terrible with remembering who the sources are for these quotes, but I think it's Viktor Frankl who said, despair equals suffering minus meaning.
Mhm.
So the more meaning you can find, the less despair you're going to feel. And for me, the entire process of writing the book was finding meaning in my life. I looked back through my life to chart the kind of discovery of my voice. So, how my artistic voice kind of broke through when I was a kid, how I cultivated it, the ways that other people would try to control it, the ways some people would encourage it. And I was able to look back at all of the most important stories in my life and reclaim my voice and reclaim what it meant for me. And so the book was it was a way of understanding my journey as one from brokenness into a new form of wholeness. Not a
Mhm.
form of wholeness where everything's perfect, and not a form of wholeness where I went back, back to quote normal, back to normal, but a version of wholeness where I feel like I'm able to live a very full and deep life and continue to express myself without the instrument that had been my primary source of expression
Mhm.
before.
Wow. I think anyone who's listening who is a musician right now is checking themselves because that is a very profound revelation that you've expressed specifically as a vocalist and as a writer and as a musician. It just is the most terrifying thing to think about. Oh, my instrument is not what it used to be. My main mode of processing life is now less available perceptibly. I
Mhm.
think, I don't know what the word is there. I am perceiving that the world is, my ability to express myself in the world has shifted for better or for worse. And I'm not sure what to do with that. It's such a beautiful thing to think about how we approach expression is just as meaningful as what we are expressing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's such a beautiful way to say it.
Mm,
I think also, there's these ways where even when I was a professional musician, I was so critical of myself.
yeah.
I was so critical of my voice and my performance, and I was doing what m most people my age do, which is sort of authenticating my sense of self based on external validation. And when my voice was gone, it was like suddenly the whole facade fell away. Like Greta the singer didn't exist anymore, and that was who I had been socially and professionally. And um, yeah, so it was really interesting to just rebuild my sense of self based on well, what do I actually love? Not who do people think I am or what do I get paid for, but like what do I actually love and what do I want to spend my days doing? And
Mhm.
I for the last 5 years, have been rebuilding my life based around that.
Yeah, that process of reimagining identity is a very vulnerable place to go. So
Mhm.
part of me thinks, well, maybe you're predisposed because of your introspective nature, your decision to write songs that are likely a little more personal than, I don't know, BTS's Butter. The lyrics are probably not as shallow and surfacey as that, although no shade to them.
Mhm.
Um, and I think about, as I was reading your book too, you wrote often about silence and even just not a lack of expression, but just the ability, the space that you need to listen and to wait. And even, whether it's to something external or an internal listening of your body and your own thoughts and your own emotions, or even your own sense of spirituality, connection to anything or others or higher power. I'm curious what kind of learning and meaning you found in that deep listening practice. What did it teach you about grief and about this rebuilding process?
Oh gosh, that's such a big question.
Yeah, sorry, you
Oh
have two
no,
minutes.
yeah, no, it's a beautiful question, such a big question. I think for me, silence is where I am able to unmatch from all of the noise that isn't mine. It
Mm,
is so easy to match to other people, whether it's the people I know in my life, because I'm like a classic hypersensitive empath. It's very easy to match to other people, and it's also very easy to match to the collective nervous system, the cultural moment of just intense dystopian panic and horror. And when I'm in silence, that's when I'm able to sort of disconnect. Almost like if I was a magnet, it's like I'm able to pull my magnet off all the other things it has been connected to and just sort of um, uh, I don't know how to say, like re-inhabit my own space and to find my truth. And I think in a way, like my main intuitive technique is to just close my eyes. If I have a decision like, should I go to speak at this event or should I stay in town and go to the wedding? I'll kind of close my eyes and just imagine both of them and look at which one I look happier in. That's like the number one way I make all my choices is just kind of closing
wow.
my eyes and seeing this imaginative version of myself. And so you asked, like, how did silence help me reshape my identity? Well, it's all these teeny, teeny micro moments.
Yeah.
It's the it's the, should I take that writing class? That person could be an interesting mentor. Should I read this book? Should I read that book? Should I write this scene? Should I write that scene? Like, I close my eyes and I just sort of, in silence, the answer becomes really clear.
Yeah. I am smiling because I do something very similarly. It's not a visual so much as where do I look happier? As a person, I am very intuitive as well. It is a settling, like I can quite literally feel the correct, and I say correct because there is a correct pressure, the correct amount of pressure, like right in my abdomen, right in my torso that says, yes, seated, correct, good, right, do it. And it's hard to describe feeling a sense of self through things like you've described and I've just described because people don't quite understand how we could trust ourselves so much. But I think part of that comes from having lost something and trusting in external expressions and experiences in people for so long, and then not being able to trust in that anymore and having to decide, well, maybe I am a little more trustworthy than I first thought.
Totally. Also, when I look back at my life, every terrible thing that has happened has been a result of me going against my intuition. You know,
Yeah.
it's like when every single thing, every single thing.
It's funny you say that. My husband laughs at me because I will jokingly say, "Oh my God, I had this moment of listen to your intuition and I ignored it, and now everything's broken." And it could be as simple as I should have picked up the other apple because this one has a bruise I didn't see in the first place. But it's
Mhm.
moments like that, little, like you said, micro moments where we're attending to this knowledge, this embodied wisdom, this sense of self that comes as part of that rebuilding self process that comes as a gift from the rediscovery, from the silence of feeling really low and feeling really disconnected from what felt like truth before.
Yeah, totally.
Mm. One thing I loved in your book was you talking about the lineage of women. You were telling a story and recounting um, a conversation with your mom, and then you started to talk about how the grief of the women in your stories really showed you a new understanding. And I'm curious, what did you learn about grief through their stories? And what do you learn about grief through the people you encounter now?
Well, I do, I am not a mother, but something I haven't observed in many parent-child relationships is sort of that the parent goes as far as they can, and that's where they on-ramp their child,
Mm-hmm.
just as far as, personal psychological evolution. And in my family and my mother's line, my great grandmother had been um, basically checked into a mental hospital for hysteria. These were like this was the era where when women expressed grief, which I believe her grief was very valid. But when people expressed grief, they were considered crazy and they were locked away. And then her daughter, my grandmother, had this absent, a mother who was never there. And as a result, her wounding was that she drank heavily. She became an alcoholic who got sober at 60,
I love it.
which, some people say, old dogs can't learn new tricks or whatever, but
Ridiculous.
yeah. But so she got sober and um my mom, was able to have this like loving mother that she never expected this version of her mother to be when I was a toddler. And my mom, became very creative. She was raised in a childhood where she didn't see much creative expression. There wasn't much talk about emotions. It wasn't a very deep childhood. And then, my mom evolved in a way where she turned our childhood home into this kind of like Eden of creativity. She would
Mm.
put paint and stamps out in the morning while she was making breakfast, and we'd be making art and we'd be writing songs. And every night before bed, she would make up stories for us. And so I just see each woman went as far as she could. And it allowed me to be able to express myself and tell my story. One of the observations I noted in the book was like my great grandmother was punished for her emotional expression in the worst possible way. And I have toured all over the world singing my emotions for crowds. I mean, like I have been, I have been on tour in Japan multiple times to sing my songs. And I was just sort of recognizing what a gift that is. That's the other interesting thing about grief is like I have gone through a very long grief process with my voice and with my physical abilities. But at the same time, I can also look at my life and go, God, I was so freaking lucky. How
Yes.
many musicians get to actually do it professionally for as long as I did, to have the kind of highs that I had, to be heard and to be seen and to be known in the ways that I was creatively. Like that is so rare.
Yeah.
So I also, it's a combination of feeling ex so much grief and also so much gratitude.
Yeah. Not to mention at 15 years old being plucked out by one of the most popular bands at the moment and brought on tour. That's like quite literally every teen musician's dream is they're going to hear me and they're going to be so amazed and you're like maybe not you but they did with me. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know.
oh my
Oh.
gosh. Speaking of music, what are some of the lyrics you've written over the years that have remained true? I know I've written a bunch of songs and poems and things that have just fallen flat as I look back, and some of that might be young teenage years, but some of it just it's no longer recognizable. I'm curious, what's one or two that have just remained real and tangible for you?
Yeah. Oh, th that's such a sweet question. There's this one song I wrote called Other Side of the Boundary when I under my solo project Springtime Carnivore. And I still feel that song very deeply. That's the one I most wish I could perform. And the chorus is every time I ever tried walking to the edge, my tired heart would compromise and I would miss my chance. But I will run now, I will run until I see the other side of the boundary.
Mm,
And I think there's this sense of becoming something more than I ever anticipated I could become.
mm,
That feels very resonant in a way that was almost premonitory, because I don't
yeah.
think I was really feeling that way when I wrote it. But that's the magic of songs. I mean, songs are is being songwriting is such a mystic art form in the sense that so often when someone completes a song, they can't explain how it happened.
Mm-mm. Well,
You know,
it,
like
it resonates in across every language barrier. Music resonates on frequency, quite literal frequencies within our body. Our cells respond to sound. When I think about the way that a lyric is powerful, but even like you were saying, just the way we put notes together and celebrate or take out all the dissonance or keep it in a major chord or bring in some minor chords, the way we create, it becomes again intuitive, not because we're just so brilliant, insightful, and creative, but because we're allowing something greater than ourselves, I think, to be created and expressed through our own story. And I think about that when you were singing that lyric or reading that lyric out, I was just thinking that reminds me of something I would have written as an angsty teenager and then later said, oh my God, the boundaries I thought I lived within were so
yeah,
self-enforced, so like
right.
so
Yeah.
fragile and temporary and imaginary in some ways. To then I imagine, I'm guessing now you never saw yourself as an author, as someone who would be speaking about caring for your body, caring for that silent space in a way that is so practical and so inviting for other people. That itself is a new boundary that you've crossed into.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and talk about like finding my voice. Like, I definitely have accessed an ability to communicate that I never had
Yeah.
before.
Yeah. I'm so grateful that we've gotten the chance to talk about this because it's necessary. And I think that that's part of why these conversations are so crucial because when we have people in your situation where you are used to expressing yourself in a certain way, now you have a layer of wisdom to apply to anything else you write or say going forward. And I'm curious with that lens of your grief experience, your story, this rediscovery of self. And now that the book is out, because I know that when you write a book and then it's done, you're like, okay, and now I have a new story to tell. What's that new story? It becomes hard to sometimes go back and revisit this book that you've already, closed the chapter on, finished the chapter. I'm curious what you're learning now about grief. I know your book is new, but like, what are you learning? How are you reflecting on it? What do you want to do?
Oh, yeah, that's such a good question. I will say the release of the book has felt like a symbolic movement to the other side of
Mm,
this.
mhm,
In a way, I feel like I have finally accepted the wobbly,
mm,
wonky version of my voice,
yeah.
uh, in a way where I can actually have fun singing now, knowing that it sounds the way it sounds,
Wow.
which I couldn't for years. I mean, I think I had a 3 year stretch where I only wrote one song, which was the longest dry spell. And it was just because every time I sat down to write and play, I hated hearing my voice.
Yeah.
And it just kept feeling like this acknowledgement over and over, like it's gone, it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah.
So since the book came out, I'm definitely more interested in, I think I'm more interested in letting myself feel joy in a way where I'm not waiting for the other shoe to drop all the time. I think the last 5 years were marked by so much loss, just peeling away all these, peeling away all these kind of outer layers, my professional life and where I used to live, and so much social community and so many kinds of expression um, and then so many physical abilities. Like I just lost so much in such a short amount of time. And now that my physical strength is returning, I'm so happy right now in my day-to-day life. Like there's so much beauty and there's so much joy, but I do find myself sort of panicking, going like, oh no, what terrible thing will happen next?
Yeah.
So I guess this is an elongated answer. What am I learning about grief? I'm like learning how to be okay in joy.
Yeah. Yeah. You're expanding your nervous system's tolerance for distress. I'll put it in clinical terms,
Yes, that's perfect. There you go.
which put another way is I can be joyful and not afraid that everything's going to fall apart. They're both completely valid and necessary ways of saying
Yeah,
anticipatory grief is no longer in charge. This fear and hesitation is not writing the story anymore. You are.
yeah. You
Mhm.
said it so much better than I
Well,
did.
I say it a lot, so don't take it. I
Well,
did not.
I love doing a podcast that feels like getting free therapy, so thank you.
You're welcome. Greta, your story, your new book, The Lost Voice, is available anywhere online. Preferably support independent bookstores, people, if you're listening. But where else do you want people to see your work, connect with you, and hear about what you're working on now?
Yeah, well, my website, gretamorganmusic.com, is a good place to start. You can sign up for my email list. Any of the workshops I teach will be up there. I'm on Instagram. Gosh, there's so many places to find people, but I'd say signing up for my email list is the best way to stay in touch.
Perfect. Thank you, Greta. Okay, if you're listening, go to gretamorganmusic.com, sign up for her email list, follow her on Instagram, and go to Spotify and start listening to Springtime Carnivore and Gold Motel and the Hush Sound, because inspiration like this doesn't come from a void. It comes from connecting with other people who are experiencing life and expressing themselves honestly, just like she is. So when you hear something that catches your attention, pay attention, because it's something important for you in the season you're in too. And maybe something Greta shares will be part of your own rediscovery. Thank you for being here, Greta. You've been a joy.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for listening to episode 223 of Restorative Grief. I really appreciated the awareness that Greta expressed through her understanding of what grief can look like and what it really feels like in the body. I think as grievers, when we encounter something new, we definitely panic a little bit and wonder for a long time, far too long, is this how it's always going to be? I think Greta's story is a really wonderful example of the answer no, this is not how it's always going to be, and yet it is going to be different than you anticipate. But that's where the beauty exists. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, thank you so much for being here. I sincerely hope you go listen to some of Greta's music. It is indie pop rock. It is fun. It is beautiful. And as you heard her reciting one simple lyric, it is complex and full of depth. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. If you haven't already, leave a 5-star review so I know how you felt about it. And tell a friend, especially if you have a musician friend who might be going through something a little different than they expected. This life does not have to end because we face down grief or loss or any uncertainty. In fact, that's where it can become just as beautiful as we always hoped it would. Thank you to my patrons for being a part of this work. I could not and would not do it without you. And as always, before we go, one last thing. Please remember, the only solution for grief is to do the work of grieving. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next week.